So that is Vladimir Putin's state visit to Tajikistan. He was received like a hero, very similar to what we saw in Dubai when he visited the UAE. In fact, even the whole capital, they decided to light the whole capital with Russian flags. This contradicts what we've been told in the mainstream media, that Russia or Putin is isolated. Now, during this visit, when it was time for Vladimir Putin to return back, the president of Tajikistan said something which I haven't really thought about it. But, after he said it, I was like, well, how come I haven't thought about this? He said, take care of yourself. Russia needs you now than ever. Yes, this is a simple statement, but when you think about it critically, or when you think about it deeply, you realize that yes, it's true that Russia really needs Vladimir Putin now than ever. Tajikistan is a former USSR, country. We will come back to the statement, but let's talk a bit about history. Tajikistan is a former USSR country. I hope you guys remember back in the 2000s, Vladimir Putin said the collapse of the USSR is the biggest geopolitical catastrophe of the century, right? Putin was right. You see, after the collapse of the USSR, you know them, right? Uncle Sam and the West, they did everything possible to break Russia apart. So they took advantage of the Chechnya crisis. So the fact is, they pumped a lot of weapons and, they were inciting Chechnya to break away from Russia. So when Putin took over, Putin said he would never allow the Russia or Russia as a state to break apart. Vladimir Putin said, if you don't feel sorry for the breakup of the Soviet Union, then you have no heart. But if you think it can be recreated, then you have no head or brains, right? So Putin's goal here was to make sure that he unites Russia as a state. So he told the former USSR countries that whoever wants to be part of Russia, come back. So the likes of Tajikistan, the likes of Belarus, decided not to go west. They decided to remain a close ally of Russia. Now, the fact is, they didn't start the Chechnya crisis. The Chechnya crisis was not started by the West. But they have a way of taking advantage of crisis, just like what happened in the Arab Spring. I hope you guys remember, they took advantage of the whole crisis. Then, you know what they did. I don't want to use some words on this platform, right? I hope you guys remember back in 2014, the Maidan coup d'etat in Ukraine. That is what they do. Whenever there is crisis, they leverage on the crisis, take advantage of the whole crisis, and make it worse. That is what these guys have been doing for a very long time. So one thing about the Chechnya crisis, they didn't start it, but they decided to arm Chechnya because they wanted to break Russia apart. I hope you guys have heard this before. Divide and conquer. That has always been the strategy of the West. Just like in Africa, when they came to Africa, we were divided into kingdoms, but they came here and decided to divide us into countries, made us small, in order to, colonize us, or in order to break us apart. That is what they did. So when you check even in Africa here, some countries are surrounded by Francophone country. Take Ghana, for example. Ghana is surrounded by Burkina Faso, Burkina Faso, Ivory Coast, Togo, and all these countries are Francophone countries. And they've done this in many places. So there are some countries there were some empires which were very powerful, but they decided to surround these empires with Francophone countries, making even communication a barrier for us, right? So they wanted to use the same strategy in Russia, the divide and conquer strategy. So they wanted Chechnya to break apart. And the fact was, if Chechnya was allowed to break away from Russia, then other Muslim countries would have started agitating for their independence. That is a fact. For a very long time, Chechnya wanted to break apart from Russia. And Putin said, hell no, I'm not going to allow this to happen. Yes, the Soviet Union is no more, but I will not allow Russia to break apart completely. Even after the collapse of the Soviet Union, some part of Russia or there were some ethnic Russians who find themselves in another country, just like the ethnic Russian speaking side of Ukraine, which they are fighting today. The whole of the Donbass, the Crimea, Luhansk, Oblast, all this part were once part of the Russian Empire. Even in Moldova, I hope I'm right, there are ethnic Russians there. Even in Estonia, there are ethnic Russians there. So this problem was already in place, and to make matters worse for them, they were trying to break Russia apart completely. I hope you guys understand the whole point. So the fact is, at that particular critical time, Russia as a state needed a leader like Putin. The fact is, Russia as a state loved Putin. They love him so much. If you are wondering why they love him, look at Russia back in the 90s before Vladimir Putin took over. And look at after Vladimir Putin took over. Before Putin took over, even food, it got to a point when even food to eat in Russia became very difficult for them. When Putin took over, one of the first aim of Vladimir Putin was to make sure that he expand agriculture. And today, Russia is the biggest exporter of grain in the whole world. So from a hungry country to the bigger exporter of grains, why wouldn't they love him? Now, he said, Russia as a state need Putin now than ever. Now, just imagine Russia as a country having a leader who will bow to the West and Uncle Sam. Just imagine what Russia would become. Think about it critically. Well, I'm not home, but I have to still give you guys this update. So, today's video is a bit different. If you check the background, you realize that it's a bit different. I'm going to give you guys most of the update in this video. And if you are new to the channel, please consider subscribing. And to our regular viewers, please hit on the like button. Well, let's go into the details. We continue to talk about Ukraine NATO membership and EU membership. I don't know why we even stress ourselves. The fact is, Ukraine is not going to be a NATO member or EU member. I want you guys to listen to this video carefully.
Well, first, as far as Ukraine is concerned, it's quite clear that, and really also with joint issuance, the point you touched, the previous question you asked me, it's clear that to go ahead in a group of 27 member countries is not going to work, because we are having some countries in Central and Eastern Europe that are really siding with Putin, that are siding with Russia.
Russia don't need to go around trying to convince every NATO member. All they need is one or two countries in NATO. If one country says no to Ukraine NATO membership, the fact is Ukraine will never become a NATO member. The same thing happens to the European Union. 27 countries. If one country, just like what we see Hungary doing, if Hungary alone says no to Ukraine EU membership, then they will never become European Union, or they will never be part of European Union. That is the fact. So there's no need for us to even stress ourselves over this Ukrainian NATO membership. The fact is, they will never become part of NATO. So we all know that Ukraine continue to target Russia gas pipelines. Well, the Russians have also started replicating the same thing. They are also going after Ukrainian gas pipelines. Even today, according to the Russians, Ukraine tried or attempted to attack Moscow, but they failed. Vladimir Zelensky also came out and said that, well, if they cannot reach Moscow, then they are going to attack Belgorod and Kursk. Interesting time ahead. So I told you guys that Russian recent attacks on Ukraine electrical infrastructure, although it is not new, but this time around it is something that we've never seen before. The Russians have intensified their attacks on Ukraine electrical infrastructure. They do this all the time. Whenever they are getting to winter, they continue to do this. Well, NATO is complaining about these attacks on Ukraine electrical infrastructure. They claim that it is war crime. The Russians also reminded NATO and the European Union about what they did in Serbia. Because when they went to Serbia, that was exactly what they did. They decided to knock out Serbia electrical infrastructure. And when Russia asked them back in the 90s, NATO said, well, the military is also using this electrical infrastructure. So it is not war crime. They also reminded them about what they did in Libya. In Libya, when they went to Libya, they did exactly the same thing. They decided to knock out Libya electrical infrastructure. They did the same thing again in Iraq. So the Russians are telling them that, okay, you started this. The Russians told them that we warned you back in the 90s not to attack Serbia electrical infrastructure. Yes, but you went ahead and did it. So we are also doing exactly what you did in Serbia, you did in Iraq, you did in Libya. I hope this is fair, or it's not fair. Thanks for your endless support. You know how we do it. If you watch this video to the last end, type Timo360 in the comment section. Shalom. See you guys in the next episode.